Three-Eye Atlas, friend or foe, rock or returning deep space secret mission, federal takeover of Washington, D.C., cleaning up the streets or cleaning out the dark secrets that dwell below. Here are the top 2 stories from the August 16th monthly live briefing with Dr. Michael Sallah.
Welcome and aloha, everyone. Glad you could join me. It is Saturday, August 16. We are transmitting live out of this Atlantean outpost called Key West. That is nominally part of the United States, but really is part of the Caribbean. It is a beautiful part of the world to live in. And right now we are experiencing a hurricane passing through the Caribbean, but thankfully it's not affecting us. All right, so here's the top story that I wanted to get into, and we'll spend a little bit of time on this because I think there are so many angles to pursue when it comes to Three-Eye Atlas. So Three-Eye just means the third interstellar object that has been observed to come into our solar system by the astronomical community. And they have so far tracked 3 of these objects. One was Oumuamua, the second was Borisov, and the third is Three-Eye Atlas. Now the big question is it a comet or is it a spacecraft? So here's something from Dr. John Brandenburg, who says that it is clearly not a comet. He says that comets are dirty snowballs of ices and silica dust, are usually dominated by water ice, but also more volatile ices like carbon monoxide, which vaporize beyond Jupiter. Two-Eye Borisov displayed this. Oumuamua did not. So, according to him, Borisov was clearly a comet. Oumuamua was not. Three-Eye Atlas is now emulating the latter. Be alert. And so it shows these diagrams are you can't quite make out the text, but here at the very front is the coma. It's heading towards the sun. This is the nucleus. This is the nucleus of the coma. This just refers to hydrogen gas, and this refers to the tail. So this does look like something is being released. There is some kind of hydrogen that's being released, but not to the extent that you would observe with a normal comet. And so this is Three-Eye Atlas, the picture on the right, and that shows that, but really what you have is just a kind of like perfunctory tail. It's just whereas on the left you have the typical structure of a comet with a big tail, lots of gases being emitted and so forth. So what's happening with Three-Eye Atlas seems to suggest that it's not just a comet, something else is going on. So here is the passage of Three-Eye Atlas, so we can get an idea of where of what planets it passes, and why some astronomers believe that to be very, very significant, and point to Three-Eye Atlas being an artificial object or a spacecraft of some kind. So let's play that video, please, Angelica. So at the bottom right, you'll see Three-Eye Atlas coming in. There it is on the green line, and it comes by just past Mars and then just past Jupiter. Now we'll do it again a little bit slower this time. So here is Three-Eye Atlas, and you'll see it's the green object. It's approaching Mars, which is the orange object, and you'll see a white object, that's Venus, kind of like in close proximity to Three-Eye Atlas as it's passing through the inner solar system. Now the Earth is the blue dot. So there's Three-Eye Atlas. You can see Earth going to the far side of that blue orbit. So as it passes Mars and Venus, Earth is on the opposite side of the sun. So we essentially won't be seeing our three-eye atlas. Now it passes Jupiter, and on it goes. So that's the path of three-eye atlas. And according to scientists, the statistical probability of three-eye atlas passing so close to these major planets is very, 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 very low. So here's the path. Here's a diagram, a static diagram of the path of three-eye atlas. In case, and if you can maximize that, please, Angelica. So here we see three-eye atlas, just from the right-hand side. It's the white dot. We can see its trajectory as it passes between Mars and Earth, and by the time it reaches here, when I showed you that earlier graphic, Venus will be all the way next to it. So essentially, three-eye atlas passes between Mars and Jupiter, but Earth will be on the other side of the sun when it does that. And then as it goes on, it swings past Jupiter, and then as it swings by Jupiter, it passes relatively close to Uranus. So let me show you another diagram. Oh, well, let's listen. Well, what Harvard astronomer Dr. Avi Loeb, he looked at the statistical probability of three-eye atlas passing close to the major planets, and he said, in his view, that it's very, very unlikely that it is a...
Ils nous ont menti. Si votre taux de sucre dans le sang est instable, ce n'est pas parce que vous mangez trop de sucre. Des chercheurs indépendants ont publié la semaine dernière un rapport sur les mensonges honteux diffusés par les industries de la minceur et de la gestion du taux de glucose. Voici ce que l'industrie des régimes et les vendeurs d'injections nous cachent depuis des décennies sur les déséquilibres relatifs au taux de glucose. Ce n'est pas parce que vous grignotez trop que votre taux de sucre explose. Ce n'est pas non plus une question d'âge ou de métabolisme paresseux. Et ce n'est pas du tout une question de volonté ou d'effort. J'ai 64 ans, et tout a changé pour moi quand j'ai compris ce qui se passe réellement dans mon pancréas. Et comment cibler la graisse qui l'empêche de fonctionner correctement. Comprendre cette cause profonde, c'est ce qui a permis à plus de 12 000 personnes de transformer leur énergie, leur poids et leur appétit. Et de retrouver un équilibre que même leurs médecins ne pensaient plus possible. Ces personnes avaient sans doute déjà essayé des régimes, des pilules ou des produits naturels. Mais comme ces méthodes ne s'attaquaient pas à la vraie cause, elles n'ont jamais pu voir de vrais résultats. Un chercheur britannique a découvert par accident un lien étrange entre le fonctionnement du pancréas et la graisse qui s'accumule autour de lui. Selon ces nouvelles recherches scientifiques, votre taux de glucose restera instable. Peu importe les régimes ou les compléments que vous testez. Tout simplement parce que ces solutions classiques ne permettent pas d'atteindre ce que les scientifiques appellent la graisse viscérale pancréatique. Ce chercheur a subi d'énormes pressions de la part des industriels du sucre et des compléments. Car il n'aurait jamais dû découvrir la vraie raison pour laquelle la plupart des solutions censées stabiliser le taux de sucre dans le sang ne fonctionnent pas sur le long terme. Il était loin d'imaginer qu'il existait une méthode simple et naturelle, à pratiquer en 27 secondes par jour. Et qui relance le contrôle du taux de glucose dans le sang directement depuis le cœur du pancréas. Cette méthode fonctionne encore mieux après 50 ans, et elle agit quelle que soit la gravité de vos fringales, de vos coups de fatigue ou de vos kilos installés. Que votre taux de sucre soit trop élevé depuis 10 jours ou 10 ans. Aux États-Unis, le succès de cette technique a déjà fait fureur, et de plus en plus de stars et de célébrités abandonnent les régimes pour s'y mettre. Même en France, de plus en plus de personnes arrêtent de regarder constamment ce qu'ils mangent pour faire confiance à cette solution plus simple, plus rapide et plus efficace. L'efficacité de cette méthode repose sur sa capacité à libérer le pancréas de la graisse qui l'asphyxie. Stoppez ce que vous étiez en train de faire et regardez la courte présentation vidéo préparée par Julien Meunier, spécialiste en micronutrition cellulaire. Il étudie le métabolisme et la concentration de glucose dans le sang depuis plus de 20 ans. Pour rappel, cette méthode ne nécessite aucun médicament, aucun régime, ni aucun appareil coûteux. Et elle agit sur tous les problèmes liés à un taux de sucre instable. Fringales permanentes, fatigue après les repas, stockage de graisse au niveau du ventre, et prise de poids inexpliquée. Catherine n'en pouvait plus de ses envies de sucre. Elle avait essayé sans succès des régimes, des coupes-faim et des gélules. Elle pensait devoir abandonner l'idée de retrouver sa ligne. Mais après avoir essayé cette nouvelle méthode métabolique, elle a perdu 8 kilos en 5 semaines, et son spécialiste lui a confirmé que son taux de glucose était redevenu stable. Michel, 65 ans, se sentait constamment épuisé et avait l'impression de gonfler après chaque repas. Il avait essayé de supprimer le pain, les pâtes et le sucre, sans résultat. Depuis qu'il suit ce rituel de 27 secondes, il mange normalement, a retrouvé son énergie, et a perdu 2 tailles de pantalon. Cliquez sur le bouton bleu ci-dessous pour voir comment ça marche. En cliquant, vous accéderez à la vidéo complète de Julien Meunier, qui vous explique tout. Faites-le maintenant pendant que cette présentation est encore disponible. Cliquez sur le bouton bleu sous cette vidéo et découvrez comment ce rituel simple peut relancer votre pancréas, stabiliser votre taux de sucre dans le sang et vous aider à retrouver une vie sans contrainte, sans fatigue et sans kilos superflus.
Comment that it is more likely to be an artificial object, and he uses something, and this is where I think that he's engaging in some unnecessary fear mongering. He uses something called the dark forest hypothesis, which is something that astronomers have just dreamed up out of nowhere. And they say that, well, you know, the Fermi paradox tells us that extraterrestrial life should be abundant out there, but when we look out there, we see nothing. I mean, that's the official position. Yeah, we see nothing out there. There's nothing out there. It's just conspiracy theorists see a lot of starships coming into orbit of the Earth and landing on the planet and interacting with people. No, that's all just conspiracy theory. We scientists, we pride ourselves on verifiable science, the duplicative process, and we see no conclusive evidence that there's extraterrestrial life anywhere out there. So what's happening? Well, let's come up with another theory, and this theory is called the dark. 5 p.m. Thank you. It's 5 p.m. over here in Key West. This theory is called the dark forest theory, and it tells us that life in the galaxy is like a dark forest. It's like there's a lot of dangerous animals. If you go into a dark forest, there's a lot of dangerous animals in there, and they can eat you. And so you got to be like a hunter. If you're going to survive in the dark forest, you got to be like a hunter. You got to have your bow and arrow or your rifle or whatever. And as you go into that dark forest, you got to be like a predator. It's either, you got to eat or be eaten, or you got to survive by hunting anything that's in there. So you got to be like a hunter. So anything that comes from this dark forest galaxy is likely to be hostile. That's the theory. That's the idea. So this is just totally dreamed up out of his out of Avi Loeb's Uranus. And people like that, they come up with these theories because they think we're idiots, that we're going to buy into this bullshit that somehow, there's extraterrestrial life or UFOs out there. They're going to be hostile because the answer to the Fermi paradox is the dark forest hypothesis. Okay, so we'll that's the theory. So according to Avi Loeb, this 3-eye atlas is a potential hostile extraterrestrial spacecraft. And the thing is, the sad thing is that the major newspapers are running with this. The mainstream media, the legacy media runs with this because, I'm an independent researcher that, had an untenured position at a university and was kicked out because I went down the conspiracy theory track. So, who's going to listen to him? He's just tinfoil hat. But Avi Loeb, oh man, this is a former head of the astronomy department at Harvard University, someone that's written peer-reviewed papers and a very prestigious academic record. If he says that these are possibly hostile alien threat, then, we need to be careful here. We need to be very wary. So this is legacy media are picking up on this, and they are pushing this narrative that 3-eye atlas represents an alien threat. Now we have something that Jeremy Corbell warns us against. And so he's alluding to, I think, a attempt by the deep state to present an incoming spacecraft as a hostile threat, and that would be used to launch something along the lines of a false flag alien event. So let's play this video clip, and it's interspersed with some information from RB
that
Lowe.
lie is going to be that there is a craft slowly making its way to us here on Earth. And that is the lie they're going to want you to believe.
Of this object appears to be quite remarkable. It arrives within 5 degrees of the orbital plane of the Earth around the Sun. And the chance of that happening randomly is...
It's nuanced, how they explain that, the nature of that threat. But that 100% is the lie you are going to be told. You even got a date. People have been whispering a date for a long time now. I know where that lie comes from. I know specifically what document from the 70s initiated the idea of that lie. A classified document. That is the lie you will be told.
And I would say I've heard 2027 in a kind of an official capacity I can't reveal. In the government are aware of something happening and that there's limited time, a few more years to prepare the people, and that's what's ramping up.
Yes, there was an official effort by some people in the government to actually look at this data, and there were some products produced. That's a fact. I won't go into more detail than that. But it wasn't 2027.
You're going to be told that there is a craft on its way to Earth. That's the lie. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I sent you 2 texts today with a year. Not from me. Nope. I'm not going to propagate that lie. Not going to be part of it. Not going to say it to the kids.
Okay, so there you have another perspective on this 3-Eye Atlas, whether he is referring to 3-Eye Atlas. So what we know then from the material I've covered so far is that there are a few scientists that believe that 3-Eye Atlas is an artificial spacecraft, and that the theory is that this could be a hostile alien craft. And according to the information Jeremy Corbell got, it is something that is part of a lie. Now, it's not clear that he's referring to 3-Eye Atlas, because it seems that he's referring to something that apparently is going to arrive or be seen in 2027. So, well, we know 3-Eye Atlas is passing through our solar system, and by 2027, I mean, it's going to be on its outbound leg. So, in theory, it could be 3-Eye Atlas. It may be some other craft, but I think it's interesting that at a time when you have people like RB Lowe, given his position and his access to legacy media, that people are talking about 3-Eye Atlas being a hostile craft, that Jeremy Corbell got this information about an incoming alien craft that would represent a threat. All right, so that's one set of data concerning 3-Eye Atlas. There is another perspective that I wanted to introduce you to, and that is the perspective from George Kavasilis, and he has had some very profound revelations concerning what 3-Eye Atlas really is, and he says that it's actually part of the returning Solar Warden fleet that was sent out more than 20 years ago, where you have these 3 admirals that set off in charge of this kind of small fleet, and that they've returned and that they've become enlightened. They're now Jedi admirals because of the kind of transformative experiences they had out there, and that the 3i Atlas is their lead starship, and that it's a stealth craft. It is making it look like it's a comet. It's projecting the kind of like structure of a comet around itself, so that astronomers from Earth that are looking at it, what they see is something behaving like a comet, and that the Navy admirals have done this purposely. That this is because they have an agenda for helping prepare our solar system for disclosure and for a profound change in frequencies. Now, he says that the Jedi admirals have taken over the extraterrestrial disclosure process, that it's no longer the Galactic Federation or different extraterrestrials that are in charge. It is now these Jedi admirals, and that their lead ship is Gerald. Now, the passage of this craft, Gerald, or 3i Atlas. Now, earlier on, I mentioned Avi Loeb focusing on the statistical probability of it passing close to major planets such as Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Uranus is also part of that equation. That George Kavasilis says that it also passes very close to Uranus, and so this is where we get to the idea that the 3i Atlas, or this starship belonging to these Jedi admirals, is communicating with the civilizations on each of those planets, essentially saying that, hey, we represent humanity, we are here taking charge of the disclosure process, and we're going to work with you. And by the way, we have all this advanced knowledge that we've gained from our decades in deep space and traveling throughout the galaxy, and we're going to change the frequency of our solar system. And so they're transmitting certain frequencies that apparently are going to have this profound impact. So that is George Kavasilis's take on 3i Atlas, and it actually being something that is not extraterrestrial in origin, but actually is human in origin, and it is part of the Solar Warden fleet. Now, what is more accurate? I know that there are other people out there. I've been approached by many saying that, oh yes, 3i Atlas, we've channeled so-and-so, and it's an extraterrestrial spacecraft. So I guess we'll find out what it is in the months ahead. But right now, it is estimated that it will probably be, I think October passes close by Mars and Venus, and so November, December is when it'll get to perihelion with Earth. That's the closest approach to Earth, but that is I think 1.8 astronomical units. So that's like 170,000 miles, or 170 million miles, or 300 million miles. So quite some distance. Now, one of the things that George shared about what is happening right now is that there has been an infiltration by synthetic Nordics, what he calls mimics, and that they are a big problem with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And apparently these admirals that have taken charge of the disclosure process have led to a cleanup of the Galactic Federation. And the story goes that the Galactic Federation was slowing down the disclosure process, and it was slowing it down because it had been infiltrated. So that's information that comes from people or contactees like Dr. Andrea Martin, Michelle Portofrio, Erica Amorina, and George Kavassilis has confirmed their information. And I just want to emphasize that because this is controversial. There are those who dispute that the Galactic Federation of Worlds has been infiltrated by synthetic Nordics or mimics. And what I'm saying is that, you know, there are credible sources saying that it has been infiltrated. And what George Kavassilis is proposing, what he's saying is that because the Federation has been infiltrated, what we really need to do is not put our trust in it, but put our trust in these Jedi admirals that are part of the Solar Warden, because they are us. Now that is something that a lot of people can relate to, because ultimately I think the big picture here is that we humans, we need to take control not just of our planet, but we also need to acknowledge that, you know, we are sovereign, independent beings with a direct connection to universal source energy within our own heart center. And while we can acknowledge, while we can respect different extraterrestrial civilizations, even highly evolved ones, we should not give our power away to them. It ultimately has to come to us, humans taking control of our planet. And I think what George is presenting here is very, very important, because he's reminding us that ultimately that's what we need to do, and that we shouldn't put our trust in any extraterrestrial organization, no matter how benevolent it appears to be, because there is always going to be a problem with infiltration, especially with organizations like the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which is a military organization. And because of that, the level of spiritual awareness or discernment is not as high as some of these other organizations that we know, extraterrestrial organizations that are out there. But according to George, he said that these Jedi admirals, they knew right away who were the compromised extraterrestrials and who weren't. And I think that is very important, that we have to grow. We have to develop that level of discernment where you can look at someone and you can immediately determine whether that person is in integrity or not. And that is what we all need to strive for. So I think George's work is very important because it points us in that direction. And not that those that believe the Galactic Federation of Worlds is, the best organization around and we can follow them and so forth and trust in them. I think, if that's where people are at, that's fine. Because that is helping them. It certainly helped me in my growth. But at a certain time, you realize that ultimately, if you give your power away to an extraterrestrial organization, you're not going to grow in establishing this kind of like connection with this infinite intelligence that exists within your own heart center. That's where true wisdom has to come. You connect with that, and that helps you discern who's telling the truth or not. Because we do have there is a problem with mimics and synthetic Nordics, and that has to be dealt with. All right, so now we get to the fun part for me, which is looking at the exopolitics perspective on contemporary geopolitical events. So this I think is qualifies as a geopolitical event, even though it really is more a national event in the US, but it has an exopolitical element that I think is very, very important. Now, Washington, D.C. Was in the last week taken over by federal government in terms of its police services. So the federal government decided to flood Washington, D.C. with federal agents, FBI, National Guard, and so forth, DEA agents, and so forth, and that they were doing this ostensibly because they wanted to rid Washington, D.C. of criminal elements and of also poverty, homelessness, drug taking, and so forth, and illegal immigrants. So all of these factors apparently came to play. The Trump administration thought that the police under the current Democratic mayor in Washington, D.C. wasn't doing enough or wasn't assertive enough, and so they took over. And so this created a furor in the Washington, D.C. area, and of course the legacy media began to began to be very critical of the Trump administration for doing this. Now, I did an interview on Redacted, and the link is here, where I described how Washington, D.C. Wasn't taken over because they wanted to get rid of the criminal elements that we are associated with: petty crime, drugs, homelessness, illegal immigration, and so forth. But in fact, that the takeover had more to do with clearing Washington, D.C. of these satanic groups operating behind the scenes in deep underground military facilities. So the video, it discusses this, or my interview discusses this at length. And so there's the link. It goes for only around 15 minutes. So I recommend you watching it, but it gives you another perspective on why Trump ordered the federalization of Washington, D.C. when it comes to law enforcement, because the goal was to actually find these hidden underground locations, facilities in the Washington, D.C. area that was being used for essentially satanic purposes. Now, why is that?
Running hurts. Tai Chi heals, especially after 50.
Important. Why is that? Well, in order to understand how Satanism operates in Washington, D.C., you need to look at how the layout of the Washington, D.C. area was configured in the first place. So at the top, you see a pentagram. Now, a pentagram, and then you also see the kind of compass, the symbol for the compass. Well, the symbol for the compass, that's a well-known symbol for the Freemasons. And it's known that the founding fathers were Freemasons. And in fact, Pierre L'Enfant, the French architect who designed the layout of Washington, D.C., was a Freemason. Now, Freemasonry, as I explain in my interview in Redacted, has two components. The first component, up to the 33-degree level, is the one most people are familiar with, and that is people doing kind of like humanitarian work and raising funds for helping deal with a lot of problems, and so they play up until the 33-degree level of kind of very positive role. Now, at the 33-degree level, what happens is that a Freemason is approached and they're tested. Now, if they pass the test, they are told that there are higher levels of Freemasonry, 34, 35, going up to the 50th degree, for example. And as they progress through these higher levels, they get introduced to the secrets concerning humanity's extraterrestrial origins, the existence of extraterrestrial artifacts, the kind of extraterrestrial forces that the Freemasons work with, which are typically associated with these reptilians, these Draco reptilians. Now, if a Freemason fails the test, and the test typically involves something like, here's the Holy Bible, I want you to spit on it. Now, if you spit on it, it's like, okay, you passed the test. You can go up to the 35th degree, and this is what it involves. If you don't spit on it, they say to you, congratulations, you passed the test. You are a 33-degree Freemason for life. And so they leave thinking that, okay, they've reached the highest level of Freemasonry and they're dedicated to good works. So the Freemasonry has those two levels. So that higher level is where the Satanism comes in. And so the Freemasons at some point were infiltrated. These satanic forces, which really are a kind of cover for worship of reptilian extraterrestrials. I mean, what we have as a civilization is that some of us will give our power away to negative extraterrestrials, and that's where Satanism comes in. Others will give their power away to positive extraterrestrials. The Galactic Federation is going to save me, and they're going to make the right decisions. And in both cases, you're giving your power away. Just one is a kind of more positive way of doing it, more benevolent, but the other is more negative. And this is where you get to the whole good cop, bad cop thing, okay? And hopefully you're starting to get the picture now. If you give your power away to these negative extraterrestrials and satanic worshippers, that's like the bad cop, right? And these are, these negative extraterrestrials, they do a lot of bad things. If you give your power away to the positive extraterrestrials, that's like the good cop. But at the end of the day, you're giving your power away. And there is a third way, and that's what I think we all need to start to consider, those of us that are watching this, that we need to start to nurture that connection to that infinite divine self within us, and make that the foundation for how we understand the big picture of what's happening around us. Now, people have been talking about this for decades. David Icke was probably the first one, to my mind, that was talking about this at length. But there are many others more recently, Dr. David Clements, George Cavassalis, and there are others talking about this. But I think that is where we need to go. So that's it. So thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Sallah. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Sallah. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.